Since 2006, the Pickle Punks are here for you.
There has been like a bit of a bloom in movies around old people in kind of thrillers and horror movies. There is The Visit. We just watched that. There's also a movie called Dementia, which is more of a thriller, again, about old people, generally with dementia. There's The Taking of Deborah Logan, another horror movie around dementia. And it's basically, as this movie was sort of themed, when the grandfather was getting ready to go to a dinner party for a dinner party that either didn't exist or existed a long time ago, and his ability to recognize reality was very flawed. Why are old people scary?
This is a hard-hitting question.
Yeah.
Well,
or like this is like a series of themes in a few horror movies.
Mm-hmm.
Why would this be a terrifying scenario?
Well, the movies you mentioned all have to do with dementia.
Yeah, that's right.
And this movie kind of did as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that as our generation is expected to usher our parents to death, we're supposed to be there with them in their old age, their increasingly long-lived old age, and to have the resources to care for them and to tend for their final needs. So I think one of the fears that our society might be dealing with is how to handle that and what that is going to be like and how scary that's going to be. And if these horror movies are art in the sense that they're trying to help society process those feelings, then it makes sense that more and more horror movies would kind of address that. So old people are scary because they break down, they go crazy, they can't control their bowels, and we have to deal with it and clean it up.
So it's a personal level of responsibility that will disrupt your lifestyle.
It's a burden that we would rather not deal with, but we must, because they changed our diapers. They fed us when we were infants. We have to usher them to death.
And what's scary about that?
We don't want to do it. We'd rather not do it. We'd rather they die suddenly.
But why?
It would be so much easier. It would be less expensive, less emotionally costly, less for them to die lucid and suddenly, rather than not knowing who they are or who we are after a long, expensive illness, is a much more appealing process.
You mentioned the expense multiple times, but then you also at that point mentioned emotional process. So do you think that the emotion piece plays a large role, or is it, like, say for instance, if the cost was totally not a factor, you have an unlimited amount of resources, would it still be terrifying?
Not as much. I think if the cost weren't an issue, that would mean that society had a mechanism for dealing with institutionalizing and caring for them, which there isn't. That because we live in this country and we do things this way, you get the treatment that you pay for. And so if you pay for a hospice or you don't pay for a hospice and you go to the emergency room, your experience is tied to what society has deemed acceptable amount to, you get what you pay for. So because it's expensive means that it's your burden to deal with emotionally and financially, because there's no avenue that society has deemed appropriate for processing these events. So
an unknown, expensive, emotionally coarse situation.
Yeah, that could conceivably last for years. It's terrifying.
Brad?
I would say the same elements that Brian mentioned are why they are scary, but maybe for different reasons, in that that's not ushering them through death, but that same process is going to happen to us, right? Like the general failing of our own health is like scary. Yeah, I mean, I think that's just one reason why, like, it's like a inherent fear of like dying yourself. I think it's like different though. Like, are you asking like why they're scary in the movie?
You can take it where you want to take it.
Yeah, I don't know. Just I don't really know what old people were thinking. It's like one thing because they're on the progression of life, they're ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if we see a kid, you're just like, I know what he's thinking. He's fucking 10 or whatever, you know. But I don't even know where old people are coming from. Sometimes unpredictable.
They are unpredictable.
Another thought I had while watching this movie, The Visit, is that thinking that they were the actual grandparents, not knowing that they were mental patients, they had very limited resources for dealing with the emotional trauma that their daughter leaving had caused. I think that all of us want to see old people and ourselves as old people as being more wise and more worldly and more emotionally capable and more philosophically endowed with resources for dealing with life than we have now. Like, we want to think that we'll be older and wiser. And when we see old people that are childish and unable to process feelings like this and act the way that these old people acted in the movie, I think that that's terrifying, because we foresee that there's no progression of wisdom, that there's no elderly philosophical repose that we will eventually enjoy, because we don't see it in these old folks.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's terrifying too.
Yeah, no, that's
Great.
yeah.
I'm not going to sleep tonight.
Yeah, and I think all those are true. The only thing I would add is that I think that in the horror movies specifically, they highlight a detachment from reality, and I think that that's the reason why a lot of horror films kind of play off people who are delusional or have schizophrenia or mentally ill, is because their reality is not your reality. And I think you mentioned this, they're kind of unpredictable in the sense that I can, if there's an event that happens, I can think of a rational series of actions I might take, or what I assume most will take. And if someone takes something totally opposite, it's jarring and concerning. So now you have someone that has a totally different sense of reality. So I have no way of predicting how they're going to react at the next moment. If they think that, I don't know, that so-and-so is still alive and they died 6 years ago, and then I have to basically tell them that they're dead, I don't know how they're going to react. But then also, if they say they're seeing things that aren't actually there, then it's like, I have no clue what's going to happen next. I mean, maybe they're going to see me as, the devil, and then try and attack me. So it's like it's the idea that they're living in a different reality than your own. And so that's terrifying, because there's no common area of prediction.
Yeah, I think the example you provided initially kind of speaks to that. Like getting ready for a party that's not there. Like you think of the scene in The Visit where the daughter, he's putting on the tuxedo, and it's like, what are you even doing? There's no party. Like, and there, if he kind of realized very quickly that he was like lost, but like if he continued down this path of like, no, I'm going to this party. Like, how do you snap someone out of that? Like, the thing you're talking about doesn't exist in my reality. Like, so where are you going? Like, what's happening?
Actually, as you mentioned that, I thought it's something that I experienced when I first started working with like mentally ill clients, and that when they started describing a reality that was different than my reality, then I started questioning my own reality. It's like if
that's not good.
So like, say for instance, if you go out and you get trashed and you're drunk and you kind of don't really know what's going on, and someone says something and you're like, weren't we talking about that half an hour ago? But you really weren't, and you're like, fuck, what's happening? Like that sort of detachment from reality can be very jarring. And if you're totally sober and and someone says something that doesn't seem like it's based in reality, then you start questioning whether your reality is accurate.